You have found the Open Eclectic Podcast, where Nate and Josh talk about everything from mobile games to books to pet peeves to cars to toys. Our interests run eclectic and we're open to more. Welcome to the Open Eclectic.
I'm Nate right here.
I'm Josh. Welcome back to the Open Eclectic. Maybe we should make this like an NPR podcast.
Hi,
welcome.
I'm Nate. You're listening to Fresh Air with Joshua and Nathan. The Open Eclectic.
I wonder if there is a podcast that is just, it has that NPR public radio sound to it where they're kind of huffing into the mic. I don't understand why that's a thing either. Like, why is that?
I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's like just because somebody did that, why do they have to keep talking that way? Is that part of like their training?
Maybe.
It's like, you have to fit this format if you want to be a personality on this. Are they even personalities? They're just
they are.
I mean, yeah, they have shows, right?
Yeah, and I get like, you want it to be soothing and stuff, but I don't know.
Or they laugh. They're like, yes. Anyway, so yeah. I don't know.
Not making any friends tonight. Well, Nate, maybe we should start with a little housekeeping.
Okay.
So in our previous episode, we were talking about Kelly Marie Tran.
Yes. So I was saying, I was like, is she Korean? I don't know. Anyway, it doesn't, not that it matters. I guess the reason I brought it up because I was like, well, were the fans giving her, grief, and she getting a lot of hate because, for her Star Wars role because of her race or her ethnicity or background. Anyway, she's her parents are from Vietnam. They immigrated to the United States after the Vietnam War. So
our apologies to Kelly, and if you ever want to come on the show and talk about your experience with Star Wars, we would love to have you because I personally am a big fan.
Me too.
Fantastic job. You always be my rose. My second rose, because my first rose was like from Titanic. Well, okay, my third rose, because my second rose was from Doctor Who.
I haven't seen Doctor Who.
Anyway, you made the top 3, Kelly, and love to have you on.
Yep. Well, do we include Rosebud?
From Citizen Kane?
Yeah. I guess that's not really Rose.
I haven't seen that movie. It's on my list.
I saw it.
It's high on my list.
I think I watched it in college for one of my... Might have been for my media and meaning class. One of my freshman classes when I was a journalism major.
Oh, yeah.
And looking back, this is totally off topic, but looking back on that, I'm like, I wish I would have stayed as a journalism major rather than switching to English. You want to know the stupid reason why I switched majors?
Why?
Like after it was 2 years, I believe. And this just kind of shows how kind of naive and I don't know if you call it just like painfully shy, awkward, whatever. So I was a journalism major when I started in college. Spent a couple years in the program at Union College here in Lincoln, Nebraska. And a big reason why I decided I wanted to switch majors, the main reason was I was afraid of having to do an internship. I didn't want to do an internship. And it shows just how little I knew about college and about the process of getting a job or getting experience. It's like an internship is basically, you have to do that for pretty much any program. So I was looking for a program where I wouldn't have to do that. And looking back now, it was really stupid. And but anyway, so I switched to English, which is not a bad major, but
how has that English degree worked out though?
Well, it worked out so well that I went back to school for a degree in information systems, and I did an internship after that or during that, and then I got a job. Not because of my internship, but it gave me experience, yada yada, the whole point of internships. Anyway, so basically I was an idiot when I was in college. So I say most people at that age, during that time probably are to some degree, some more so than others. But this isn't really a coming of age type, reflecting on the past type of podcast. I guess it could be. I mean, we are open. We are eclectic. You know.
I try not to do that too much.
But you can. We got more interesting things to talk about. Anyway, so what we want to talk about on this episode is RPGs, role-playing games, right?
Yes.
Not rocket-propelled grenades.
Oh.
Not those.
I might be on the wrong podcast. What am I doing with this then?
Anyway, sorry, I'm gonna go now.
Let's put that away. My bad.
Bye. See ya. Slam. Yeah, Josh is gone. He thought we were talking about explosives, but we're not. Just kidding. He's still here. So I think this was kind of your. I mean, I'm not gonna throw this in like this is your idea, Josh.
This is your idea.
Well, what do you? But you kind of brought this up. Like, what do you want to talk about?
Well, it's kind of it's been a thing that I think through the pandemic has come back into vogue a little bit, of tabletop RPGs specifically. Because then there's the other kind too of video game role-playing games that are kind of, when you compare the two, I guess it's not really much of a comparison because it's still.
Well, it's like in the video game, it's like a lot of the heavy lifting and like the building of the character and that kind of stuff. I mean, that's all kind of like done for you a little bit. I mean, you assign points to things and depending on the game, I guess. But it's like, calculating the stats for stuff is all just done automatically, and combat is all just done behind the scenes. I mean, depending on the game, obviously, but
yeah. So just thinking about, I was thinking a lot about RPGs, and Nate and I play in a game that I run occasionally on Thursday nights, where some of our friends get together and we roll dice.
I mean, it's a regular thing. I mean,
it's pretty regular. It's
not every week, but because some people have their jobs kind of get in the way, but that happens, and so we meet about as often as we can. Yeah,
we have a nurse that plays with us, and so her schedule's is probably the most unreliable, so to speak, the most variable.
It's always her fault,
basically.
That's why we can't do it every week.
We can't do it.
No. But yeah, her schedule is, like you said, is unpredictable. So
so we try to be understanding, and then sometimes we have one of the other players who hoping will maybe come on and talk about her experience eventually. We'll run a game. She did a Christmas one for us where we were elves, and we had to run around and figure out why there were certain crazy things going on in the North Pole, and we had to do it in the time frame of finishing it before Santa left, basically, to deliver gifts.
I think he left. He left. He left right at the beginning, and we had to come to the end game before he started delivering presents, I think.
Yeah, that's right.
She's probably like, no, that was totally wrong. It's really interesting how I'm sure more so for you because she's been working with you more directly, but obviously, but like it's really interesting how she took to the whole idea, right?
Yeah. It was kind of in my head. I was like, I found a system I wanted to use. Mm-hmm. And I knew that, before we started doing the RPG, and the system we use is GURPs, generic Universal RolePlaying System. Before we got into that, we just played a lot of tabletop games. We talked about the letdown, maybe not the letdown, but just the labor intensiveness of
daunting
like
task of Fallout. That's kind of what we started with, I guess, a little bit.
Was that and like Versus, and we played Carcassonne and.
Yeah, we did play that new Versus game, didn't we?
Yeah.
I bought it. I spent a crap ton of money on it, and we played it once. Anyway,
let's do that for another one. We've tried different things. I got an X-Wing miniatures game, tabletop game.
We did play X-Wing quite a few times.
Yeah, pretty heavily for a while. Mm-hmm. And as we were going, I just kept thinking, man, I really want to make my own game at some point. And so I started looking at different systems, and I was like, well, why don't I do like an RPG or something like that, where you roll dice and you don't need a lot of bits and pieces. And so I looked at obviously the giant that's out there now is Dungeons and Dragons, but man, much as I enjoy watching like Critical Role on YouTube or something like that, I don't know. I feel like the combat really gets bogged down a lot. And it slows down the game, and all of my friends who've played talk about these like marathon sessions that they end up doing where they're running for like 6 hours, 4 hours, 6 hours. I have a friend who told me that his sessions sometimes go all day. Like they get together in the morning for breakfast and they finish at dinner time. And I was just like, I can't do that.
Yeah, see,
I got kids, man.
I started playing D&D with some coworkers. Gosh, when did we start? I'm like saying like last year, but in my head when I say last year, I'm like, it's 2019. I'm like, well, no, that's not last year. That's like 2 years ago.
Yeah.
Crazy, man. It's a pandemic. It's a couple years ago we started playing, and we'd play on Friday afternoons after work. Because where we work, usually with the work schedule, we were able to get off around 12:30, so we would have time to play in the afternoon, and so we'd play for 2 or 3 hours, and yeah, that's probably about my max too. Like if someone was like, yeah, we're gonna play for 6 hours, I'd be like, no thanks, I want to do it.
And I've seen people like on Reddit and they're like, I really want to do like an RPG, but I'm just terrified of these like really long sessions, and 4 hours would be long for us. And I like chimed in like the good Redditor that I am now and was like, yeah, I don't know what you're doing, but you should check out this system because like we keep it pretty tight. Like
we do.
For the most part. There's a few sessions that have kind of gotten away from me a little bit as I've learned more about kind of anticipating where's a good point to stop and that sort of thing.
Well, I'm sure, yeah. I'm sure that's can be kind of challenging, especially if it's like really kind of rolling along and we're having fun, and it just kind of the time keeps going, and then it's like, yeah, I'm sure that is a challenge. I can see that.
There's definitely been a few sessions where we played and I was like, okay, I see the time, we're gonna wrap it up here, and I'm gonna try and bring everybody back together or find us, put us at the good stopping point. And then somebody does something and I'm like, well, 45 minutes. Here we go.
Combat time.
Yeah. So it's just there was one night where I was like, in hindsight, I should have read the room better, and we should have just not played because of how ridiculous people started playing, and I was just like, oh man. Okay, here we go. This is how we turn people into murder hobos.
Which one was that? If you feel, you don't have to say.
So it was actually 2. So the one we did where we wrapped up the Alta Link.
Was I a murder hobo? Have I ever been a murder hobo?
Oh, so that was the one where you were ill that night. You weren't feeling well.
So that was just, what, 2 weeks ago? Okay.
Yeah, and so one of our Alexa decided she was just going to draw her gun out on everybody. And I was just like...
Wow, usually she's pretty reserved and like level-headed, and then she just starts just blasting.
Don't get me wrong, it was fun. It was absolutely fun, but it was just still like, oh man. And then there was another one in our Star Wars campaign where everybody was just, I don't know, acting a little silly, and I was like, man, maybe we should have waited. Maybe we should have just called it and not played tonight, and we should have played a different game where we could all be like unhinged.
They'll be silly and killy.
Yeah. But like, so as I started looking at different systems, I was thinking about how stats work, and I haven't played like a campaign or anything for D&D yet. But the basic thing is you have like a 20-sided die, and you roll for your stats. I mean, that's like an oversimplification because I know that there's D4s and D6s and D8s.
Yep. Yeah, there are multiple. I mean, they have D&D sets of dice that have all the different shapes, and because they all come into play at some point, depending on what you're rolling for. I will say, when I got into D&D, it was overwhelming for me for like the character creation, and then just because they have the whole freaking manual for the 5th edition, which is what we're playing. Just trying to figure out what race and class and blah, all this stuff, and like trying to come up with these different, it was just a lot of friggin' work.
Yeah.
I mean, I know that, the GURPS stuff is also...
It can be
a lot of work, and I, props to you, because I know that you've, put a lot of work into that and helped a lot with the, with like a spreadsheet, helping us with stats and things like that.
Yeah, it's The biggest difference is that I've noticed is like with D&D, it's a game that you play, and yeah, you build stuff up and you role play and stuff. But like GURPS is a set of rules, and you choose what you want to play, and you pick what rules you want to apply. So like, it's not a situation where I can just tell everybody to go get the player's manual and like look through it and stuff. Instead, I found it easier to just be like, no, how about if I just explain the base of how it works, and we'll start everybody with a couple of stats, and we can grow it from there. And that's kind of, how we did like the intro campaign, which I now call Alta Link. Was supposed to be a one-shot thing for just Nate and JD, and now it's turned into a big thing where everybody wants to try it, and it's become this thing, and we'll see. I've made plans for how it's going to end and stuff, so we'll see how that goes. No spoilers.
I will say that GURPS is like way more open-ended, or just open.
Yeah. Like
you're not constrained by the whatever campaign and whatever edition of, like you said, get the rule book, read, the guide.
Yeah, you can
do whatever you want.
You can try anything, and that's fine with me. So like in our Star Wars campaign, the goal was not to have like a pack of Jedi running around with lightsabers or anything. It was supposed to be just adventurers, and maybe you would cross over with a Jedi at some point. That was my original goal, sort of inspired by like the Mandalorian a little bit, how he's a Mandalorian, he's not a Jedi, nothing like that. And then someone goes, can I roll for the Force? And I had said explicitly earlier, I was like, you can attempt to do anything. And when he said that, I was like, yeah, absolutely, you can try. And in my head, I was like, he's got to critically succeed for this to work. And then he did. and then everybody wanted to try it.
I'm going to be using the Force too.
Yeah. And so it kind of took off from there. And that was just, I think that was like a point of reading the players. And I was like, everybody kind of wants to do this.
Sure.
Let's just do it. Everybody's going to find a kyber crystal, build a lightsaber. And
I will say, my character is not strong in the Force, and like from the beginning when we started doing that, I'm like, I'm not really gonna try much for the Force here.
Yeah.
And I feel like sometimes it's kind of funny because people are just like, I want to roll for the Force. It's like, nope. Like I want to roll for the Force again. Like, nope. It's like.
yeah, it's kind of
but it's like it's a really cool mechanic, really cool thing, and my character has his own issues with other psychic-ish things anyway, so no spoilers.
But when I was looking at before I decided to commit to like the GURPS thing, I was like looking at the way that D&D uses dice, and although I like there's a variety that's kind of fun, because your typical game just has a 6-sided dice, dice, but the D20s are really cool, and the 8 and the 4 DCs, dices.
Don't want to get technical, but
it must be Latin. And so I watched different like, you can YouTube how to play D&D and find all kinds of stuff. And there's a video of Vin Diesel playing Dungeons and Dragons, and I found like a synopsis of their campaign and stuff, and he rolls, and he was like, critical, and I was like, oh, that's cool, and everybody goes wild, and like that's pretty cool and exciting, and I like that feeling. But then you rolled another one, and I realized, wait a minute, so your odds are just 1 in 20 when you roll the dice? I was like, I don't like that. I like that. And I started thinking about how dice work, and I was like, I really like how Settlers of Catan uses dice, where if you roll 2 dice, certain numbers are more likely to come up because there's more combinations that equal that. It's called a bell curve for all of my math nerds out there. And so I started playing with a website that I found where you could manipulate a bell curve, and you could be like, okay, so if I add a die like this or like this, like what numbers does it give me, and that sort of thing. And so I started like writing out rules for this like system I was just going to do on my own. And then I realized like how bogged down it would be, because basically instead of increasing your numbers that you can roll and be successful by, my idea was to just add dice, because that would then increase your bell curve. So like your odds of rolling the middle numbers would go up really high. And in my head I was like, yeah, because then it decreases the odds of you rolling like a critical failure and a critical success. You just get like really consistent at what you're doing. And then if you roll crit, great. but it makes it super rare. And
how many dice were you at?
Oh man, I was like, oh, so if you increase this and you would do this and this, then by the time I got to the end, I was like, wait a minute. So like, at what point would you hit mastery? Nobody's gonna want to roll like 5 dice at once, like not all the time for every skill in that thing or whatever. And I was like, I just think it's getting too complicated. And that's a problem that I have when I try and incorporate rules or whatever, is like, I made it too complicated again, didn't I? So then I was poking around somewhere and I found a podcast called The Film Reroll, which is where they use the system of GURPS to replay movies. And so they start with the opening scene or however the GM wants to do it, and then they just take over characters in the movie and go from there.
Mm-hmm.
The outcome is never the same, and it's great. So I was like, what is this that they're using? GURPS. What's a GURP?
GURPS.
Yeah. Which is also just a fun word to say.
Excuse you. GURPS.
GURPS. Yeah, so then I found GURPS, and I found that they break it down really nice. So if you go to the website for GURPS, which is like stevejackson.com, I think, something like that, they have what's called GURPS Lite, and they really stress that you just play so that your players and you have fun.
Oh.
Like, it's not this hard and fast thing of, well, this is how you have to do this. Like, if you want to ignore that particular rule or whatever, you totally can. Mm-hmm. It's just important to like be consistent, and you can make it so that your combat is super crunchy. And like, GURPS is a hex based map, whereas D&D is a square based one. So you could incorporate like half turns into the hex grid, and you could map it out and be like, when I step forward 3 steps and I reached my hand down to my hip, and they'd be like, all right, that's your turn, next person.
Dang it.
And like, we could really go through like that, which I find to be terrible. So we don't.
Yeah, I in D&D I kind of find that a little tedious with the squares, like having to move, like, okay, so I have whatever my this fast movement thing, so I can whatever do. I can do this many extra steps or whatever. I don't know. It's just that's what I like about so far with my exposure to GURPS is that it hasn't been that like tedious with that. I mean, some of it is like in combat. Some of it is where, and not that that's bad, but that's that's the rules that we're playing under. Like
sometimes you can't get around it. Like,
it's like it's like I want to pull out my gun, or I'm going to shoot him. It's like, well, have you pulled out your gun yet? It's like no. It's like, okay, well, you gotta ready it, so that's gonna be your turn right there.
Yeah,
and whatever, that's fine.
We try to keep it moving along, and I think everybody has kind of, now that we've done combat a few times, people are kind of a little more prepared of what to expect, and we definitely have more, I would say, rules and possibilities in like our main Star Wars campaign than we did in Alta Link, because Alta Link, it was just, you get to be a better version of yourself in this game.
Yeah,
and it takes place in the city we happen to live in.
Right.
And it
you
was
live at the same place.
Yeah.
Everyone is all the same except.
Yeah. And it was meant to be a one shot that I was like, let's incorporate like a hidden item that you could find it, or if you don't find it, it won't be a big deal. And so like, they're the guns from the 6-gun comic that I talked about last episode. And so far people have found them, and I don't know, except JD.
I found one, didn't I?
So you found the one for you guys's, and then
So there was just one in ours.
There's just one in ours. There's just one in each version of Alta Link. And then I have another friend who's going to come on and play, and there's one more in that campaign, which is also the trickiest one to use. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, like I've really enjoyed the GURP stuff so far, and I'll say I've definitely enjoyed it. I've enjoyed it more than D&D. Not that I haven't had fun playing D&D, but I did find D&D to be a little. I get bogged down in it. It's like really, it's tedious, and you got to pay a lot of attention to the numbers and what's in your inventory and how many pieces of silver. And not that doesn't come up in GURPS, but I just feel like our encounters and the scenarios that we're in, it hasn't been as big of a deal, which is cool. I mean,
there's a lot of opportunity to be cinematic in GURPS.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's not in D&D, but like in a
movie...
I
think there is, but...
You don't ever hear the main character be like, oh, this money won't all fit in my wallet. What will I do? He's like, take the money, put it in a pocket, which obviously has nothing in it.
Right.
Sometimes the bullets don't run out when they're supposed to.
Mm-hmm. Well, and it's like you can play. I mean, I'm sure you can play D&D. There's a level of a bit of freedom, and obviously you can be creative with it, and it's just it may not be for everybody. Just like anything. I mean, it's not any one thing you come up with. It's not for everybody. Some people like it, some people don't. That's fine. Yeah. Some people really get into the mechanics of D&D. I just don't really think that I'm one of those people. I mean, I can have fun, but it's just, it's okay.
Yeah, it's kind of weird how, like, even people who really like D&D, they always complain about it, though, too. And maybe that's just, like, the nature of, like, fandom right now, but in some ways I'm always like, well, play something else.
Right. It's like, what?
Fix it. Why don't you just call it a homebrew set of rules, and, like, that's not
is
how
that
we
like
do it.
the what is that? Oh, God. The sunk cost fallacy? Like, I put so much time into this.
Yeah.
That I just can't give it up.
Yeah.
It's like I just got to keep going. No.
And that's kind of like I don't think any of my players have. There's no cost like to come and play. I have extra dice. You can use those.
Yeah, I don't.
It's time. You come and hang out.
Have you been on D&D memes on Reddit? I used to subscribe to that. Yeah, I feel like there's a lot of drama involved. Like, you get a lot of drama with the friend group. Like well, I play with this one group of people for D&D, and Sally's like this, and Bobby does this thing, and I don't know. It gets real catty and just dramatic, and part of that, I guess, is human nature. I don't know if it's the game that brings that out in people. I don't know, but
there's mechanics in GURPS that I didn't like, so we don't use them.
That's fine.
Yeah. For example, the turn order for combat or anything where you would need a turn order.
Like initiative kind of thing?
Your initiative would be based on your basic speed stat, which is determined by other stuff. And I was like, in my head, I was like, yeah, I don't know if I like that. Like, sure, it kind of implies, basic speed implies how fast you can run and that sort of thing. So, okay. But that doesn't necessarily relate to your reaction times.
True.
So sometimes I have, depending on the situation, everybody rolls to see how they react to, whatever's crawling out of the sewer or whatever, to see who can react first. And whoever rolls the worst goes last because they're more shocked by what they see.
Right.
Or sometimes it's just like, if you're all kind of tensed up, you guys were sneaking into like the enemy's home base for one, and you started getting attacked by a bunch of Trandosians or whatever. I was just like, all right, who wants to move first? And we'll go do turn order that way.
Right.
Because you all were in a state of tension already, so it didn't make sense to be like, no, you're going to be penalized because you weren't ready. Well, you're all on your toes. You were all ready.
So it sounds like you could be as like technical and rule abiding as you want with GURPS, or you don't have to, but it doesn't like it's okay. Like, it's not like a game breaking thing if you decide to just not abide by this particular rule.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Because you're making it's your own thing.
Mm-hmm. I posted onto there's a GURPS Reddit page, naturally, and there was like a recurring thread where they talk about like share your campaigns that you're doing this month or whatever. And so I shared just a little bit about like the alternate reality of Lincoln that I do sometimes, and I was like, I always feel like I'm doing the game wrong though, because I've read the rules and I know how I do it, and I know that like it's fine or whatever, but I always feel like I'm doing it wrong. And someone was like, yeah, everybody just feels that way. If your players are having fun, I wouldn't worry about it. And I was like, hey, all right, I can live with that.
Yeah, see, that's what's cool about it, because it's like, having fun, like being the most important thing. I mean, obviously, you don't. You can't just let the characters, the people, do whatever the heck they want without abiding by any rules.
Yeah, there's rules and there's consequences, but
right.
So, I mean, for example, so we were doing a while back. Our Star Wars group was infiltrating a casino, and one of the characters decided he wanted to roll to see what he could scrounge up, like backstage from like a staged area. Well, he rolled poorly. So I said, what you find is a rubber chicken. And he goes, great, I'm taking it with me. And I was like, sure, why not, buddy? and I forgot about it. And then he goes into this room where the Trandoshan's, which are like the dinosaur monsters kind of thing, Bosks, I guess, if you're familiar with the bounty hunters from A New Hope, or from Empire Strikes Back, sorry. He goes in there, and this one guy goes to yell, and I was like, all right. So he opens his mouth to yell really loud, and the player who picked up the rubber chicken goes, I throw it at him. And he rolls his dice, and he critically succeeds, and so we just ruled that it went right into the guy's mouth and prevented him from yelling. It was like, why not?
Yeah.
It was ridiculous.
It's pretty great. I don't know. I feel like, I've been really, like, bagging on D&D. But I think, just overall, it feels like D&D is more, is more concerned with the rules and the constraints of, you can't do that because, I don't know, because XYZ, and GURPS is like, there's a little bit more wiggle with that.
Yeah. So. In a way, that's like D&D's strength, though, is, if you're connect with someone online, you're like, yeah, I play D&D, and they're like, I play D&D too. You automatically have, like, rules that you both understand and know and have played by. GURPS is a little trickier because
you have to explain your system.
Yeah, you'd be like, and so we get really general of like, well, I play more cinematic, and then someone will be like, ooh, I play grid maps and crunchy combat.
So crunchy, you're being like more like really involved, like number crunchy type thing, like yeah. So yeah, that's a really good point. Like you could say that that's a pro of GURPS, but also it could be a con because if like you said, if you're connecting with someone online, or you go to the comic or a game store and start talking to somebody, it's like with D&D you could get together and be like, we have this manual, this is the edition we're doing, so we have these rules. GURPS would be like, well, so we're gonna go to Josh's house, so we're gonna play with his rules, so he needs to explain his system to us.
Yeah.
So so that would take a little bit of time. But then then you're in it and you're going. So a pro and a con, I guess.
The good thing about GURPS too, and I guess I don't know if this exists for D&D or not, is that there's like levels of rules that you can play with also. So there's what's called GURPS Lite, and then there's even GURPS Extra Lite, where it's a 1-page pamphlet basically that you can literally fold down so it's pocket size, like smaller than your cell phone. And so you could give that to your new players and be like, hey, this is what you need to read, and then when we get together, this is how that we're going to play based on this little pamphlet right here. Mm-hmm. And I've seen posts by people who, like, they only do that. They're like, yeah, I've never bothered with getting what's called the basic set, which is our manuals, I guess, for GURPS.
Because there is a GURPS manual.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, it's like a 2-volume manual, and it's great. It has a lot of cool stuff in there, as you'd expect, for different abilities and things. And then there's like expansions for different editions for if you wanted to run a kung fu campaign specifically, like here's different fighting styles and how they would work and that sort of thing, and you can get real detailed for that, where there's like a ton of weapons tables and stuff for how powerful.
Right. And I mean, D&D, that you're saying that, and I'm like, well, okay, that reminds me of the D&D manual, like the player's guide, I think is what it's called. Because, yeah, they have all those, so much information in it. So it's like, you could be on the same, that same kind of level as there is with D&D. You could get that way with GURPS if you wanted to. Yeah. But you don't have to.
There's not as many, I haven't seen any nightmare stories about rules lawyers for GURPS like I have for D&D.
Oh, God. I haven't encountered anybody, and I've only played in one group, thankfully, I guess. No, I mean, I haven't had the pleasure of being exposed to a rules lawyer or dramatic people in my D&D.
Yeah, but I can see how they, when you get together and you say we're playing 5e 5th edition for D&D, I could definitely see how somebody be like, no, the rules say this. You said we were playing this. I want to do this.
Yeah, and I mean, I get that, I guess, and feel passionately about it, and they read the rule and they're like, okay, I'm gonna fight you on this because this is how I interpreted it. But I mean, I guess ultimately it comes down to the DM.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
And GURPS is real clear about that, like in the basic set and in the lights and maybe in the ultralight. They say specifically, like, whatever your DM says goes. They might have other ideas and not follow this exactly or whatever. And if you've got a campaign, then it's important to try to keep people on track.
Right. Well, isn't that kind of the, like, speaking of Steve Jackson, I mean, isn't that the way they kind of are with Munchkin too? Like,
yeah.
Do they say, like, there's a DM, like, overruling ability or something, overarching ability?
Sort of, yeah. It depends.
Like, if you're quibbling on a rule or the card interpretation of the card's text or something, and then the DM's just like, nope.
Here's what I'm saying, yeah. And so that's what I do for Munchkin. There's a lot of... Munchkin is one where if you're a rules lawyer, you'll be in paradise, because there's so many, like... There's, like, the basic rules, but then each card brings its own additional rule or, like, exception to the rule kind of a thing. So you can get real tricksy with, like, how the card is written. And you're like, no, there's no comma there. That means it continues on. Like, it sounds ridiculous, but, like, those are the conversations that I've had and debates that we've had about, like, no, that's not what that means.
Your brother is pretty notorious for that, right?
Oh, yeah. Well, Eli and I both are... when it comes to Munchkin, we're rules lawyers. We're absolutely that way, to the point that, like, we had to come to an understanding that, like, we could have a debate, and then if we're playing my Munchkin, then whatever I ruled would go, but you could call it into question later, and we'll, like, do the research and look at the GURPS forums where, like, not the GURPS, the Munchkin forums, where employees of Steve Jackson games actually answer your questions sometimes.
So have you actually asked a question on the forum? And you've gotten a final ruling?
So I have, or usually too, if you look, somebody else has already asked the question, which has been my experience for most of it. And so we've discovered ways to, like, theoretically break the game and make it so that you can't win, which isn't supposed to happen, but does. So yeah, it's kind of like that.
Nice.
But yeah, that's how I wanted one of the GURPS campaigns to be. It was kind of fun, a little bit of wacky in there sometimes.
Sure. Yeah.
And let's see what the players wanted to do, rather than telling everybody, here's what you have to do.
Yeah, that's, like, I guess, again, I don't have a lot of experience with D&D, so I'm like, I know that there's, whatever, the version, and there's the campaigns. Like, I guess the, people that make it, like, they make the campaign and the rules, so, like, that's what you play. I don't know if there's people that play D&D with their own.
I'm sure there are.
I mean, I saw Stranger Things. They made their own campaign, right?
Right, yeah.
Like, that was geared more towards, their actual, in the show, the people that they were, and they're like, yeah, we're slaying these monsters and we're friends and it's cool.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. So, I mean, my understanding of it so far, we've just been playing, one of the campaigns that they have. So
one thing I'm really kind of jealous of the D&D stuff, though, is they have, like, a monster manual. So you can like flip through the monster manual and be like, ooh, I'm going to pull, this out, and we'll fudge the stats here because it's slightly stronger than, the base one that they give. GURPS has been a little more tricky because everything is just, like, I have to make it.
Right, so you have to make your own monsters, right?
Yeah, so any bad guys or anything that anybody fights or does, like, that's something I have to go through and detail out. And so sometimes, most of the time, if it's, like, henchmen, we just give them, like, dump base stats, basically. Kind of a thing. But we're getting to the point. We've had a few people where they've had very particular stats would have to be overcome. Their abilities would be very well balanced against, 4 or 5 people running around with lightsabers.
Yeah, I guess I hadn't thought about that, but yeah, you're right. I mean, there's the monster manual is like a separate from the player's handbook. So there's that. Like, you have that information, so you're like, okay, well, we're gonna encounter this, or whatever. And it kind of like you were telling me a long while ago, and I've read online, where, like, fantasy authors, or I suppose science fiction authors too, like, they, as opposed to, I guess, just like general fiction, or kind of like this happens present day, or this happened 20 years ago, or whatever. They're like, with an established world and technology and customs and all this, and with sci-fi and fantasy, they have to create world, like the world building. They have to create all that stuff. They have to create oftentimes they create, whole languages, lore, mythology, all that jazz. I mean, that's, obviously on a smaller scale. I mean, you're having to do the same thing with some of the GURPS campaign stuff.
Yeah, and that's why I started with, with our Alta-Link campaign. I was like, let's just have it set in Lincoln, present day. We all are familiar with the city, right. So it doesn't take like a big stretch. I can just tell you, oh yeah, you got to go down to 48th and O Street, and there's a Chick-fil-A right there.
Right. And that, that's the cool thing about GURPS. You can do whatever you want, so you set it wherever you want. So it's like you could create a whole new world and society and whatever, or with it being your first campaign, you're just like, well, you know what? Let's just put it in our town. Cool. Yeah. Boom. Done.
For Nate and JD's, I was like, yeah, anything that you guys actually own, like right now, and you could prove to me, like if we really, we're gonna be a jerk about it, be like, yeah, that's right, go home and get that thing that you're talking about.
I sold it yesterday.
Right. I used to have it, so like JD was like, okay, we go to my house because I have guns, and I was like, oh dang it, I forgot about that. Oh, that's right, he does. And so he was like, yeah, I give Nate this gun, and I'm going to keep this gun, and I've got this ammunition. I was like, well, okay, here we go.
Gonna have to adjust for that a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm like flipping through my book, and I was like, guns. Oh, here we go. Okay, I'm good now.
So you're talking about, so you're flipping through the manual, and there's stuff for guns, and you were saying earlier there's, all kinds of, there's different fighting styles and weapons, and so like, what's the weirdest thing that they have put in the manual that you've come across as far as like a mechanic or a type of weapon or something?
I would say disadvantages are the most interesting to me, because there's skills that you can learn, which all make sense. Mm-hmm. So there's like magic skills. One of the campaigns, JD's a wizard, so he wanted to learn Fireball, of course, because he wanted to be a stereotypical D&D wizard specifically. Which was fine. Like, we worked it out, and I was happy with that. But then there's, guns and different things, and
guns, knives, stabbing weapons.
Yeah, melee weapons. And the interesting thing about guns is like, there's like there's a term for it, and I can't remember what it's called. But with Wild West guns, you could hold down the trigger and just use your other hand and slam down on the hammer repeatedly to do like a rapid fire thing. Yep. And so like that's a function that you can that's like a skill you can learn. But all of those are kind of like logical, and yeah, they make sense, and here they go. But like the disadvantages to me are what crack me up, because you can have like you can make your character really ridiculously ugly, or really ridiculously good looking. And you could use like attempt to Bob, I've got the black lung. Yeah, so you could have like some of those kind of weird disadvantages for your character, or like.
So in this case, so the disadvantage, like they're really ugly, so they could be off-putting to people or characters they encounter.
Yeah, so if you're ugly enough, basically people will roll. You'll have to have your NPCs roll your non-playable characters for those uninitiated.
Yes, thank you for defining that for us.
You could have them roll to react to them, and if they react poorly enough, then you could have potentially hilarious consequences, depending on how repulsive they are. So you could have them be like repulsive, or somebody posted on a forum about how their character became blind, and they weren't planning on it, and so they wanted to know about like the language skill of how to use Braille, and what that means, and how they weren't taking like the comic book version of like, well, when you go blind, your other senses are heightened, which is not true. So you're like Daredevil running around. Right. Like, no, we just want him to be in the campaign, because it's not actually like an action campaign, so it's not a big deal. But there's okay. Yeah.
Wait, people do this and they're not action campaigns? I know, right? Like, what would they do? Like, they're just telling a story or experiencing a story that's not an action story, I guess?
Yeah. So there's
Okay.
Sometimes there's like detective stuff where you're basically doing like I guess for me that probably comes out to being more like an escape room almost, but You know, so there's like that kind
solving
of thing.
A mystery kind of thing.
Puzzle dungeons or murder mysteries or like, you know, like Alexa's. That wasn't an action campaign. We went to we were elves in North Pole trying to figure stuff out and running around and, you know, rolling it on our skills to try and do it.
Right.
Or in the campaign she's running now, which was supposed to be a 1-shot and is now a 2. We're older
people.
Citizens in like an assisted living facility.
Yep. I don't know how she came up with that.
I don't either. It's so much fun though.
Yeah, it's great.
It's all like super grounded and realistic, but also just bizarre and very fun.
It's got like a kind of like a Stepford Wives kind of vibe to it.
Yeah, I'm getting that vibe a little bit. And I was like, "Can I roll for coffee connoisseur?" She was like, "Meh, your character's not a coffee connoisseur, just you are." And I was like, "Dang it."
Yeah, because you're like, well, I know a lot about coffee. Can I use that knowledge? And like character's like, no.
Nope.
Darn.
Yeah, and that's you just gotta let it go and roll with it. Hope for the best. So you can do anything you want. GURPS is great. You can literally do anything you want. There's the film reroll used the GURPS to put together a Toy Story campaign where they rerolled the movie Toy Story, and it started out one way and then it ended very different, and there was all kinds of shenanigans.
So okay. So back in the day when Josh and I were quite a bit younger, we worked together, and we had for a time we were talking about I think we even put it on a whiteboard where we were. What were we trying to do? We were trying to recast.
We would take
movies with.
We were like, what if the characters from Toy Story, those were actual people, and then we put them into other movies,
like Top Gun or Toy Story or something, Lord of the Rings kind of.
So yeah, we were like, okay, so like Buzz and Woody are leading men, so they need to be whatever movie they're in, they would have to be leading dudes. I want to say we did like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah.
And we cast that with the characters from Toy Story and Top Gun and
I remember. Yep.
Like a bunch of those. We had a whole.
I knew what we had. We should have like documented that more.
In those days, we didn't just have cell phones that we could whip out of our pockets that were also cameras.
We had to write it down, and if we didn't, we would have had to film in a camera and taking a picture.
Right.
I guess there were digital cameras back then, but not too many people had those. Not like now where everyone has a digital camera in their pocket.
Yeah.
Okay, so what if we did a GURPS someday? It'd be sweet if we could do like a re-roll of Top Gun.
But with Toy Story characters?
I was just kind of making the connection like where we did that, but I was like, I wasn't thinking we would necessarily do that, but what if
Maverick was played by Buzz Lightyear?
Oh, man.
So you have
Infinity
to go through...
and beyond.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Shut up, Maverick. Just... You gotta land the damn plane on the carrier.
Imagine that, like, imagine if you were a filmmaker, though, and you were shooting it, and Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story was in that role, and he's like, I just want to try this out, guys. Okay, what if right here, instead of, I don't know what, instead of talk to me, Goose, what if I go to infinity and beyond? I just want to try it.
Or he's like, okay, so like, what if... Okay, so I know I'm supposed to be a fighter pilot, but, what if, instead of flying a plane, what if I just fly myself? Because I have wings.
Oh, because then what if you were, instead of Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story, what if you were Buzz Lightyear from the show Buzz Lightyear Star Command?
Yeah, he's in Star Command. Yeah. Oh, man. Well, because the Buzz Lightyear from Toy Story knows that he can't actually fly.
Well,
he can fall with style. He can glide.
Yeah, that'd be a wild campaign. We should maybe put that together.
Okay. So maybe we could just do it like straight, like just re-rolling the movie, and then
Top Gun.
We could also do it with this extra twist, because I feel like they would be very different. So Bo Peep she would have to be Kelly McGillis.
Yeah, right.
Charlie, is that her name?
Charlie.
I should know. Watched that movie so many times.
And what were you doing up there? And then you hear the sheep. I couldn't leave him at home.
Keeping up foreign relations.
That'd be interesting. That would be a really wild twist.
It would be Goose. Rex?
Would Rex?
Oh!
I think it would have to be.
Well,
as much as I love Goose, I always felt like
But Goose was a little more. Character. He wasn't. I mean, he was kind of dorky because Anthony Edwards just kind of seems a little. Just kind of a dorky dude. I love Anthony Edwards, by the way.
Absolutely. He just had different priorities because he was a family man.
He was.
Who was flying airplanes, as opposed to Tom Cruise's Maverick, who was
a loner.
Like, I don't even remember his actual name in the movie.
Pete Kazansky.
You know, but Goose has a name. Maverick is Maverick, and the other name is like his fake name to me, you know.
He's not Kazansky, he's Pete Mitchell. Sorry.
Pete Mitchell, there you go.
Gosh. I'm slipping, man. I don't know where the hell I got Kazansky from.
It's kind of a movie name.
Yeah. It's Kazansky. It's Kowalski.
Kaczynski? Mike Kaczynski?
Mike Wazowski?
Mike Wazowski.
I feel like Rex is a little bit. I mean, he's a real like head case, and Goose is not. I mean, Goose, like, he's a family man. He also likes to have fun, obviously. You know, the Officers Club.
Oh, Mr. Potato Head. No, Mr. Potato Head have to be like...
he's real, like, henpecked by Mrs. Potato.
He'd have to be the guy who's, you know, their CO at the beginning of the movie, really.
Yeah.
This could take some work, I think.
Flying a cargo plane full of...
Yeah, rubber dog dude.
Rubber dog poopy.
So the real question is... Okay, so let's say we did a movie re-roll using the Toy Story characters. Then, like, how much of their characters' abilities from Toy Story would play into their role? So, like, if you had... Let's just say we were doing John Wick, but Mr. Potato Head was John Wick. Okay?
So is Mr. Potato Head...
Like... Well, he's
so was
packed
he
his angry eyes, just in case. So, like, could he, instead of, like, killing him out with a pencil, would it be like he rips out an appendage from his butt or whatever? And, like,
opens up the cargo door?
Like, is that how that would work? Or would that be off limits and be like, no. It's whatever Keanu Reeves could do, but just as if it was played by Mr. Potato Head.
I don't know. I feel like you'd probably do a little bit of both. I mean, obviously, you think you'd have to make a decision, like, where you wanted to draw the line. Because, like, would Mr. Potato Head have been an assassin for the... for the Russian mafia or whatever, or Mr. Potato Head from Toy Story is the actor who is now playing the character of John Wick.
Yes.
So
some sort of alternate reality where the Toy Story characters get sucked in and can somehow make movies.
I feel like so
it'd still be Mr. Potato Head pretending to be John Wick.
Mr. Potato Head is playing a role, playing John Wick. So I feel like it would just be like, I don't know if he would like. That's the thing about Toy Story, like, they don't necessarily have, like, special abilities. Like, all of the stuff they do, other than, being able to talk and move on their own, is based in, like, reality, right? Like, physics and...
Well, I think Buzz Lightyear definitely has more, like, agility and, like, strategic ability. So it's more like just kind of personality talents. Woody can be creative.
Because, like, his like, physical condition as a plastic toy,
right?
But he's a space command, whatever, commando guy. So
the Toy Story universe rules are really loosey goosey too, because like Woody suddenly can like have articulated digits, right? And he can point and stuff. But like the toy version of him, his fingers are all glued in like one piece.
Army men.
And
so
the Army men are real stiff.
Yeah,
right?
They're like the guys that have the little platform underneath. Like they like have to like. They have to like stump along.
And when they gesture and stuff, it's like they're wearing mittens a little bit more than it is like pointing a finger.
Like a Grand Theft Auto, an early Grand Theft Auto, where everything's just like a fist, or or like. Ugh.
Yeah, so like the rules in there are really kind of it's like a big sliding scale.
Yeah, I just now like talking about them, like why the heck wouldn't they have made the Army men more able to move more freely when, like you said, all these other characters can move? Because obviously these toys aren't all going to have, they're not like the fancy figures you have now where everything is fully articulated and they can move fingers and elbows and
they don't move like the toys' articulation. There's not a direct correlation to how they move either, because obviously they're not like bending in the middle of their bicep. They're moving where their joints are, but like Woody is plush.
Yeah, so his is just like it's just like a squeezed. Yeah, it's just like so he doesn't really have joints. He's just kind of like he should just be like a floppy mess.
writhing around on the ground.
Yeah.
And then Bo Peep is made of is a solid piece, and then suddenly she can move.
Yeah.
So there's not really a stiff rule for that. So
and Forky is in
trash.
He's trash, and we talked about this in our first episode. We were talking about Toy Story because we were talking about how we. Anyway, listeners, if you haven't listened to the first episode, do it. It's so why wouldn't they have given him more freedom? Because it was more funny.
Yeah.
It was funnier for him to just be stiff and just be trash. Why didn't he just transform into something that could move like the other characters?
Yeah. And I liked his movement, don't get me wrong. It just there's not a good solid rule for that. Or how some of them can blink. That makes no sense. None of those toys had articulated eyes except for
the creepy dolls.
Yeah. Mama. But Woody could blink and half close his eyes and
Yep.
It's very weird. Very weird.
I like this idea though. I feel like we should pursue this.
Pick a movie and wedge the Toy Story guys in there.
I want to say we were trying to do stuff with Lord of the Rings too.
It's such a big cast though.
Yeah. I think we should keep it small.
Yeah.
Or you can do whatever. The cast of Seinfeld characters playing.
That would be hilarious to do a role of Seinfeld. Because
that would be cool.
It's a show about nothing.
What is the deal with hairline?
Or maybe even Friends. That would be interesting to do with. Because there is always a problem that they kind of have to solve in Seinfeld too. There's
there's always whatever the situation for each episode. What's the problem or the conflict they have to resolve?
It's not quite a show about nothing. Almost. I saw that show. It was just snow on the cable television after signing off.
Yeah, Seinfeld. I mean, Seinfeld's great. I kind of want to. I mean, it's on reruns around all the time, whatever. So I was too young, I think, to really consume that show when it was on, in order and all that. But I've caught quite a few reruns of it. It'd be kind of interesting to go through that one from the beginning to the end.
We bought the complete box set of Friends. We started that. Joey's hair in those first couple episodes is crazy.
Joey Tribbiani.
But that's kind of bringing it back home a little bit. That's the beauty of GURPS. You can do that. You want to re-roll your own episode of Seinfeld? Do it. You want to do your own episode of Seinfeld as though the characters of Toy Story were in the roles? You can do that.
What if? Okay. Oh, my baby, my precious.
X-Files?
Yes.
So
I could consult.
Maybe you should run that campaign. So I've discovered.
See, that's what I was thinking. I'm like, well, would I run that? I'm I'd have to. It's a lot of work.
It is.
It's a lot of work.
I had thought I put down a bunch of ideas too, kind of before we took off on the Star Wars thing about to have some backup campaigns.
Weren't you asking us for some ideas on things? And I'm sure I said that, but
and one of them's X-Files. And what I've discovered, X-Files is kind of a detective show.
Yeah.
Outside of the whole aliens
cases, they work outside of the because there's mythology episodes and there's Monster of the Week episodes. Monster of the Week ones are a little bit more of the detective solving a case type thing, and they're kind of one shot, self-contained stuff.
Yeah. What I've discovered is that if I set up a puzzle for players to solve, either it comes out being stupidly easy, and so it's not even viewed as a puzzle, or it's really, really difficult, and Nate's character almost dies one hit point at a time because I thought I had a clever riddle in here that surely the party would help him solve or help whoever solve to do
Is
it.
The stick thing?
Yeah, and instead it turned out to be really, really difficult, and I had to modify how it worked to make sure that he didn't die.
Nate's gonna die!
Yeah.
I'm glad you didn't let me die.
Yeah, so it was just I'm okay, I gotta be really, really careful about building out puzzle dungeon type stuff or detective stuff, because just because it seems obvious to you when you have the answer doesn't mean that it is. But I think you could do a lot better with that than I could. I've always had a tendency to be either too blunt or too subtle.
Well, I don't know. I probably would. I might surprise you, Josh. I probably would try and be too subtle, too clever for my own good, and nobody would get it. Like, come on, it's like
yeah, I'm in the same boat. Like, come on, guys, it's there. You read
there was the letter E was on the floor underneath this tile. Why didn't you just rip it off and look at it, and then you'd know exactly where to go.
So would this be a straight X-Files episode we'd re-roll, or would you be like, okay, we're going to do X-Files, but in the role, instead of Mulder, it's going to be Woody, and instead of Scully, it's Bo Peep?
I think it'd be a straight one.
Okay.
Like straight X-Files, so like people would be... So, well, okay. So then they re-roll the movies, the film re-roll, they're assuming the character's obviously in there. So I think it would be the same thing with X-Files.
It's weird, most of the time they're pretty careful about, like, assuming the characters and not the actors playing the characters.
Probably kind of hard, like, to probably have to remind the players, like, you're not being Tom Cruise, you're being his character in this movie.
They're all like almost everybody on the show has like a thespian background.
Oh,
so it's
they're actors.
They're actors to some level, but they all also tend to bring in their own gaming tendencies too, which is fun. It just brings like fresh light to something. They re-rolled The Rock.
Oh, sweet. I really need to watch
I should watch that again. I know. I was just thinking that. So they did The Rock, and so the guy who was playing Sean Connery's character in that played it very different than Sean Connery did, which was great. Like, it was hilarious and entertaining. And then the guy who played... They also re-rolled Aladdin, and that game has one of my favorite throwaway stat things in there. Because, like I said, GURPS, you can do whatever you want. And you can try to do whatever you want, depending on the rules by your GM, of course. But so someone was like, who is Jafar, was talking about his first encounter with Aladdin. He was like, well, he has like extremely good looking on his sheet. Does that affect me at all? And he was like, you sure, roll to fall in love with Aladdin, or roll to not fall in love with Aladdin. And so he rolled, and he was like, oh, so I rolled close enough that I think, like, I'm not gonna like switch teams for him, but I'm thinking about it.
Wow.
And it was like, I think I'm going to like actually attempt to mentor Aladdin, and instead of like try and sabotage him, like, I want this kid to be around and stuff. And so it changed the dynamic of like the whole thing. It's great. It's so worth listening to.
Oh man. Yeah. There's so much stuff, so many like YouTube series and things, and comics, books, TV series. Like, I got a huge list.
I know. The list goes on.
Huge list, man.
Well, and sometimes they flip the script. The first episode of their show that I listened to was the John Wick one. And they were like talking about it. And they're like, yeah, as I built out the stats for John Wick, I realized that he's too overpowered. Even for a movie, it's kind of ridiculous. It is part of the mythos. And that kind of what makes it fun. But he was like, it wouldn't be a fun game to play. And so instead, all the players were the Russians, and John Wick was the bad guy. So it still like followed the events of the movie. It's just awesome. They were like, how do we like defend ourselves?
Yeah, because he would like, looking at it that way, he's just like he's like the ultimate bad guy.
Yeah, he was the big bad evil guy in that
Baba Yaga.
Yeah, and so it was great.
So did they succeed in the campaign?
I'll let you find out. Don't take my word for it.
Let's check it out. So wait, is this a YouTube like video, or is this a podcast? It's a podcast. Okay.
The Film Reroll on wherever you get podcasts from.
Wherever you download your pods. This always slightly irritates me when people say pods instead of podcasts.
Yeah, because
it's an aside.
When they're like, wherever you get your pods, like Keurig pods.
Yeah, my K-cup things, my whatever espresso
Bean
pods. Yeah, pea pods. Are we talking gardening? I mean,
the pods from Halo ODST where you come down from the ship onto the ground and
drop
pods. I mean, come on.
Oh, podcast. I know exactly what you're talking about. Yeah. Don't throw this awkward fellow kids slang at me. Just say podcast. Because none of the kids say pods.
Nobody says pods.
Now, they say pods, they're probably like, you mean like my vape pen pod, or my AirPods for my iPhone, my wireless Bluetooth.
I would accept
earbuds?
Calling your iPods or whatever they're called just
AirPods?
pods. AirPods? I don't know.
I mean, I think most people just say AirPods.
Right? I would probably
it's
call
so
them
ambiguous.
iPods.
Yeah, like iPods. Like those, nobody has those anymore. They still make them, I think.
Really?
I think they do.
I kind of want to get like an iPod 1 and just put a bunch of music on.
You know, there was definitely like a golden age of iPods, like just the real basic one that had a screen on it and had the little rotary control thing, but you could fit like, you know, I don't know, 500 gigs of music on it. Mm-hmm. People are like, I still have mine. I have it hooked up in my car, and I just got my whole freaking library in there and just play it.
To plug them in now because it'll wipe everything when you do it. So like
in the car, what?
So like Shelly did that
on the computer or on the car.
She was like, "Oh, let's load up this, rip these CDs or whatever, load it into iTunes and put it on the iPod." And we went to do it, and when we plugged it in, it was like updating your iPod, and it wiped everything. See, all the music and stuff that was on there is gone, and
man.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I suppose it's getting to a point, especially with Apple, where, I mean, they're really good about, well, I don't want to say really good, but I mean, they still support older devices for quite a while. I guess I had like 1 or 2 iPods, and I didn't really even use them that much, so I'm not like familiar with how far they support them. So like the really old ones that, like I said, the golden age iPod, I don't know, yeah, they'd be like, plug it in and it just like self-destructs, like, phew, you have owned this for too long, please buy a new iPhone. Boom. No. Because like you had, I sold you my Zune back in the day.
Oh yeah, I had a Zune, and then
that thing was actually pretty sweet. That was a video, like you could play videos.
I liked it a lot. And then my aunt gave me like the Zune Mini, like the smaller version, and that was still, both of them were just fantastic devices. The batteries crapped out on them eventually.
Is that the downfall of them?
Probably. Zune wasn't without its issues, but I definitely think they didn't get enough credit.
Yeah, so when I got that, my mom and grandma got it for me for Christmas one year. I had mentioned to my mom, during the summer, I was trying to explain to her like the storage, like talking like gigabytes. Like you can have this many, and then there's this much, and talking about iPods. So like I really wanted an iPod, and she got me a Zune. They got me a Zune instead, and I was like really disappointed because because I'm an a-hole, whatever.
Kids.
Yeah,
basically.
Well, I was in college.
Kids.
Still a kid. But yeah, I mean, it did the same thing. It was fine. It was cool. And it had a lot of cool, it was video, and you could watch videos on it. It had a screen, and the interface was pretty cool. Even like the physical design, like the material, like it had that kind of almost like translucent, like white stuff on it.
It felt great. So there's an advantage to the Zune too. After I bought it from you and I started using it, and I had a bunch of music that I think you bought on it, like I got to keep that.
Oh really?
And it linked up into my computer.
Did I not wipe it?
I don't think you wiped. You were like, yeah, there's a bunch of stuff on here, and I was like, that's cool.
Here
whatever.
You go.
And then when I got my first Android phone, you could download the original Play Music, Google Music app that they had. It's not the one they just got rid of, but the one before that.
Sure.
You could put an app on your computer to link with it, and whatever music was on your computer, you would have access to on your phone.
Yep.
And so then you could then download it onto your phones. Like all of the Zune stuff that was Microsoft worked perfectly with my Google Music for a long time.
Sweet.
And so anything that was on there, I automatically had access to, and I was like, this is great.
Yeah, Apple, like they were real strict with the DRM on the music and other things. Like initially, I remember when I first started using it, like I would purchase songs or albums on iTunes, and like I would have to, burn it to a CD from iTunes, and then rip the CD back on the computer to get it to where where it wasn't affected by the DRM on it or something like that. But like I feel like that was like kind of a temporary thing for a couple years, and like it wasn't around after that. Like, but it was a real pain in the butt.
Yeah.
And like I remember there was some CDs where not too many, But when the whole music piracy thing was a big thing, and you'd try to rip an album, and you'd start listening to the tracks, and there'd be like these like hisses, like this like you couldn't listen to it because it was garbage. But that was their way, I guess, to combat piracy, which we don't condone on this show. But
I mean, listen. Number one, piracy is not theft. Okay, I don't care what they tell you. Theft is when you come. If I steal your car, I take your car away, and you don't have it anymore. If I were to pirate your car, you'd have your car, and I'd have a car just like yours. Not theft.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing, because it's like it's a copy, but it's a digital copy.
Yeah.
It's like you can just clone it, make another one. How much is it hurting that somebody pirates it?
I've done my share of piracy, like in my life, but the things that I've liked, I've then bought eventually, like when I could.
Yeah, and that's like the whole the thing with that is like, yeah, if you really enjoy something, you're more inclined to pay for it. Like, okay, so you pirate it now, you listen to it or watch it or whatever, experience it, and you're like, wow, this is really awesome. Next thing that comes out, I'm gonna buy it. Or maybe then you're like, you know what, I like this so much, I'm gonna go out and buy a copy of this same album that I pirated, this album or this book or this movie or whatever.
Honestly, I feel like getting something from the library. You borrow the CD from the library, and if you like it enough, I'll buy it myself.
Right.
It's not like the artist gets more money the more times it gets checked out from the library.
Right. Yeah.
It works a little different now with books and Overdrive, and the way that's scheduled up is...
Yeah, how does that work? Like, I never thought about that. Like, is there any type of royalty beyond for like an author? Talking about libraries, is there any royalty beyond just the library purchasing the copy of the book?
Yes, there can be.
Okay.
It depends. You can buy a license that gives you unlimited access to the book. You can buy a license that gives you like unlimited reads of the book, but only one person can check it out at a time.
So you're talking about electronic, right?
Yeah.
So I was thinking like physical.
Oh, physical books.
So
no, they just buy the book.
The library buys the book, so the author gets the royalty for that one copy.
And that's it.
But then that's it. So like it can be borrowed and returned, there's nothing extra with that.
Right.
So with electronic, then there's more.
Yeah, there's a whole scheme of like ways that it gets broke down.
Yeah, because we only have 5 electronic copies of
whatever.
The Rainmaker.
Right. And they're all checked out, get on the wait list. They could totally just go through and be like, you know what, we're just going to satisfy all these wait lists right now and pay like a fee for that.
Okay.
You can do that.
Okay. Wonder they probably do that if like it's really high in demand and like, man, we only have 2 copies of Game of Thrones, we better get more.
Yeah, it just depends on a lot. If it's a new book, I've noticed that they'll do like a new book that's coming out that's going to be popular and in demand already. They'll typically look at the wait list, at least in our area, and be like, there's 50 people waiting, so let's get 20 copies, and then we can reduce that number later.
How do they reduce it? Like, what do they do? Do they sell it off, or
no? Because it's so for electronic media though, then they just tell Overdrive, we don't want this many copies now. We're going to reduce it to this amount.
But yeah, okay. I suppose that's like software licensing. It's the same kind of thing, which I deal with that in my work. So it's like, I guess we don't want these subscriptions anymore, so we'll just take 2 of them off. Like,
it's kind of crazy the way that works. It's insane the way it works.
Oh, I was gonna say like about piracy. We're talking about how people, if they pirate something, then they're and they like it, they're more inclined to to purchase new stuff in the future or whatever, purchase whatever it was they pirated initially. Another like a big thing now with everything being like a subscription, being a service, it's like a lot of times people are pirating because it's not convenient to get. So something they're perfectly willing to pay for, but for whatever reason it's not convenient, or it's it's just too expensive for them to get whatever service gives them access to this. They're like, you know what, screw it, I'm just gonna pirate it.
Yeah.
So it's like I would pay for it, but these companies or publishers or whatever are making it too difficult for me to even get access to it. And so it's like they're shooting, these companies are like shooting themselves in the foot, because they're like, they have people that would be willing to pay for it, but for whatever reason, depending, whatever form of media it is, like they can't get to it.
The fear of losing profits has shaped our society in ways that I think are underappreciated. Like the reason that a movie costs as much as it does, when you go to buy a new movie and it's, whatever, $25, $30, the standard edition, keep in mind, that's the same price that you paid originally for VHS when it first came out. Like when home video started becoming a thing, theaters got a lot of money based on re-releasing movies in the theater, or movie companies did. And so they were like, we don't want to lose those profits, so if a family's buying it, then what they're buying is like 4 theater tickets or whatever. And so that's why they set the price high, thinking people aren't going to buy it. And then it's just stayed that way because we've come to expect that, a movie costs $25, $30. And like the same thing with book publishers were afraid that their profits were going to go down dramatically when ebooks became a thing. And so they just said, well, whatever the cost of the book is, that's what we'll charge for the ebook too, which kind of nerfs the idea of like saving money on production.
Yeah.
And like being more responsible.
Passing the savings on to your customer?
Yeah, or not.
A little bit?
Or contributing to like less paper being used,
sure,
and being more responsible that way. And they discouraged it by, if a new book comes out, and it's changed a little bit in the last couple of years, but I remember I got D. Snyder's autobiography after he was on Celebrity Apprentice, and it was like $20 to buy the ebook.
Yikes!
Like, this book has been out for a while. This should be like $5 or whatever. And
you could probably find a used copy of it somewhere.
I know,
$5.
And it's not like you can sell your digital copy to somebody else.
Yeah, I mean, that's a whole nother can of worms. Like,
share it.
Like, I know that you really enjoy getting like the DRM free, EPUB when you can, which makes sense because all the stuff that I've gotten has been, not all, but like most of it, you get it from Amazon, like the Kindle, whatever. I get it from Kindle and it's on my phone and I can read it, whatever. Or, Google or something. But it's like, and I know that there's been horror stories, people have had massive issues with this, thankfully not me, where like somehow they lose access to their library, or Amazon just decides to delete their account or something. And then it's like, you spent money on this, like you've got notes and highlights in the, in here, in these, whatever, these various books on the Kindle, and now they're just gone. Yep. It's like, you paid for it, but you didn't own it. It's like you
don't own it. That's the crazy thing.
Basically, you're renting it from Amazon, and if Amazon sometime, 100 years or whatever in the future just blows up and is gone, those books are gone. Like, you don't. It's not like the physical copy in your bookshelf, and the handwritten notes in there. I mean, it's just gone.
It'll be interesting to see what happens if people start trying to will their digital library to their family or something, because how does that work? You'd have to like shift accounts and do a bunch of stuff to like, sync that up.
So
but it's not like when you have a library in your house and grandma gives you like her book collection and you get them.
It's the same thing with like video game libraries, like PC gaming. Steam is the big dog at the table with the store and the whole the store to purchase the games, and you can chat with your friends on it and all that stuff. So it's like, people have these libraries of like hundreds of thousands of games. I'm like you said, like, what if I want to give those games to my kid when he gets older and he can start playing games? You can't really do that. Like you said, unless I basically give him my email address, and so then he can then take control of the Steam account.
Yeah, which is something they're cracking down on now too. So.
Oh. Well,
I don't know if Steam is, but like there's been a lot of like password and sharing to not let that happen.
Sure. Yeah, because I get they want to make money, but it just seems really greedy, because it's like, why shouldn't I be able to will this to my child or to my family member? I spent thousands of dollars on these games, throughout the years. I want them to be able to experience it. And they're like, no. They need to make their own account and purchase all those games again.
Yeah.
Because we need our money. It's just,
I guess.
They don't need it. They want it. Bastards. We're just like... A
little bit, yeah. It's very frustrating. And that's kind of what's deterred me a little bit. Like, I have a friend who got rid of all of his books. All of them.
Oh, really?
He owns no paper books, and he only reads digitally. He was like, I realize... His logic was, he's like, I realized that, like a lithium battery, making it's not great for the environment. I do get that. He's like, but in my opinion, it's like a push in the right direction of not killing the things that give us oxygen.
Okay.
So that's what he did. And like and he's also kind of got a minimalist lifestyle going on, so that's very convenient for him.
So it's kind of like he weighed the pros and cons, and
yeah,
that's important to him. The trees are important to him, as they should be to everybody.
Yeah.
And he decided that having a battery in a device, so it is less damaging than continuing to buy physical copies of books.
Or maybe it was just it was like a plethora of.
It's probably not that simple,
But he was just like, if I can't get the book from the library, I kind of don't get it now unless I really, really, really want to buy it because I don't own it. It's not like it's mine. It's a digital library, which I prefer, but there's no incentive for it. Like monetarily, there's no incentive to go ebook only.
Right.
So yeah, I do some ebooks. I go for it, but I still think about it when I'm hitting that purchase button where I'm like, it's not like it's mine.
Well, and there's the whole, like, opinions vary on how likely, this is, but, what happens if some cataclysmic, apocalyptic thing happens and the internet's gone and you can't charge your devices anymore, and it's like, what are you left with? It's like, if you don't have physical copies of stuff, you got nothing. It's like, if the internet's gone, if the server that is on is gone, then it's just gone.
Thinking about it from like kind of on those lines too of like censorship. You don't own those digital books, which means that as soon as you connect to Wi-Fi or whatever, and you have your book on Amazon, and somebody's decided that book should be censored and you shouldn't have it, they can just take it from you. And there's not really any recourse from you. They don't owe you a refund or anything like that. It's in the terms and conditions of this is basically a loan.
Yep.
Now sometimes, like the altruistic part of my brain says, hey, this could be a great opportunity though for schools. If they buy a textbook, they always have the most updated version of that textbook. So if there's corrections that need to be made, that can actually work in their favor of like, hey, we've redone this information, it's updated, there you go.
Well, that's a whole nother can of worms. With electronic access to textbooks. I was on the tail end of that with school. Obviously, it's a much bigger thing now with the pandemic, but I've heard that's a real mess too, and it's not a mess that's favoring the consumer or the student.
It feels like nothing is.
It's favoring the publisher, the textbook publisher. On that happy note.
What a downer. Jeez.
Well, we talked.
Maybe Buzz and Woody need to be like moguls who are like publishing moguls. That could be a campaign.
Wolf of Wall Street.
Would he be Leonardo DiCaprio?
I mean, he's the leading guy.
He'd be that, or would we do Buzz? You could probably do either one. Actually, if you're gonna do a campaign, I would do both. We could experiment a little bit.
Who would be Jonah Hill?
Oh man,
Slinky Dog.
Slinky Dog.
Yes. Ow, Woody.
Oh, Woody. Show me how to sell. Show me how to sell. I want to know what you do, Woody. Come on. Yeah, that would be.
Oh man. I really want to do this now.
Yeah, I think this might be your baby, Nate. I'll send you the books.
All right. I got X-Files. I think that would be fun.
I think that would be a blast. I think X-Files would be great. Because you could potentially make it real short too, ish, because it's a show, 20-minute show, whatever. 30.
It's an hour, 45 minutes.
Were they an hour?
It was an hour-long show, so the actual runtime was like 45 minutes. commercials and all that.
In those days, 45 to 50 minutes.
True. Now it'd be like 38. Can make it something really silly like Mulder needs to reset his password for his computer. I don't know.
His old Windows 3.1.
Yeah.
Hand me that floppy disk.
Oh, their cell phones. Jeez. Giant Nokia things. What's really funny though is like there's an episode. So the show starts in 1993, right? Right. And there's a show that like flashes back. Well, I mean they have a few flashback ones, but this flashes back to like still during like Mulder's career, but like a few years before that, like 1989. So I mean the cell phones were large when in the show in the present day, but then this flashback one in the 80s, 89, he's got this huge brick phone with like the fixed antenna, you know, and
oh man,
yeah, that was funny.
Should dig up one of those and put service on it. Go into Verizon with that baby.
Would they even give you service on it? Could you still like dial 911 on one of those? Like,
I have no idea.
Because I always heard that like even if the cell phone doesn't have service, you could still dial 911.
Right, I've heard that too.
Interesting. We covered a lot of ground tonight. We started talking in this episode. We were talking about RPGs. We spent a lot of time on that, and then we went somewhere else. But that's what
we do here.
That's cool. That's the beauty of the open eclectic.
See if Nate can actually make some progress on putting that X-Files campaign together. I think.
I guess I can start working on that.
I think it needs to happen.
So, if you want to check us out online, we're on Facebook, The Open Eclectic, Instagram, The Open Eclectic, Twitter, The Open Eclectic. We also have a Ko-Fi, ko-fi.com page if you feel so inclined to donate some scratch to help us keep this going. It is also The Open Eclectic, ko-fi.com/The Open Eclectic. You can find Josh and I on Instagram personally. Josh is the Gray Cleric.
Correct. That's THEGREY. That's how I spell gray. I don't do the AY. And then cleric is KLERIK. I don't do C's apparently either.
I am _RX_N8 on Instagram. Everyone take care, and we'll catch you on the flip.
Bye.
Later.
Thank you so much for listening. You can find The Open Eclectic on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and MySpace. Want us to ramble on about something specific or have a comment on what you just heard? Send us an email at theopeneclectic@gmail.com. We now have a Ko-Fi if you feel like supporting the show. That's ko-fi.com/theopeneclectic. Or support the show by leaving us a review. Thanks. We hope you'll join us again next time on The Open Eclectic.